And we are recording.
Great, thank you, Richie. Welcome, everyone. As some of you might have read on Twitter or other communication channels, we are talking about Explore today, more specifically the query history. And if you have anything else that you would like to talk about, feel free to add it to the agenda document. Let me also quickly drop the link to the document in the chat again. It should be publicly editable for you. So if you have anything specific that you would like to address in the progress of this call, feel free to throw it in around the agenda for the current date. And yeah, while you look at that, I will start my presentation so that we can do this properly. Let me share my screen.
Hey, Jess, out of curiosity, since I don't really see it here, what is your overall schedule for this call? You're going to give a presentation and then...
Yeah, we're going to get to that. I hope I added a slide for that in the presentation. If not, I will do it anyway. Yeah, so I've already mentioned the topic of the call. And at first, welcome everyone. Happy to see you guys. So about these calls in general, we meet on the first Monday of every month for everyone who didn't know yet. So the next one will be on the 7th of September. If you're interested in joining more regularly, feel free to put it in your calendar so you don't forget. Always same time, same place. Each meeting will have a different theme or feature, and we announce that in the document and on social media and in our public Slack. So hopefully you will be up to date. And also we want you to suggest topics or drive the discussions as well. That's why we have this public document. If you have anything in particular that you would like to talk about in a future call, just contact the UX team or the Grafana public Slack, and we will see what we can do. So there's the meeting URL again, but you probably already know it because you are here. And you can also subscribe to the Grafana Labs calendar for updates. There is the UX team from Grafana Labs. I think some of them are here today. David, I've seen David, and Oana is here. Yeah, so that's some of us represented, and then the rest you might meet in future calls. And as some other tech companies as well, Grafana Labs is currently growing. The UX team is not having any job offers out at the moment, but feel free to check our job page on the grafana.com website for other job opportunities with Grafana Labs. And yeah, anything UX related, you can drop in the Grafana public Slack. We have a Slack channel called Grafana Fails, which is about all the things that Grafana is failing at, not you failing, but Grafana failing. So please tell us when that happens so we can fix it. And then the UX team also has an email address, ux@grafana.com, so you know where to find us. Now the agenda, as Diana already asked. So first we want to take just a tiny quick look at what happened to your feedback from the last session. Then we have some announcements. We will quickly talk about upcoming features and projects and how you can help us make those better. And then we will get to the main topic of this session, talking about the query history. There I have a short presentation about how we actually came up with the feature that you know and hopefully like. And we also have plans to make it even better. And Ivana, who is also here in this call and working on this feature with me, is going to demo the status quo. And then we can collect your feedback and opinions and have a little discussion about that. And of course, we will answer any questions you might have. And it doesn't have to be about the query history. You can talk about anything and everything that you're interested in, maybe Explore related, but we will also appreciate any other questions and feedback. And then in the end, we will announce the next UX community call, and then that's it. So unless anyone has any questions or remarks, I would jump right into it, but feedback, anything? I guess that's a no. If you have anything that you would like to be addressed, you can always also throw it in the chat. Ooh, I can see we have another person joining the call. Hello there.
Yeah, it's Teddy who started today at Grafana Labs.
Newest UX team member. That's great.
Welcome to the party.
Hello. I didn't even put her on the UX team slide yet.
No worries. David just sent me the link like a minute ago.
Cool. Yeah, happy to have you. All right, so let's get to it. Your feedback from the last call. The main topic that you asked us about in the last call was regarding transformations. And as you can maybe see in the doc, in the meeting notes, the main question was, how do they even work? Because at some point they were a bit broken. So we have now a blog post that explains how they work. I will also throw the blog post in the doc later. And then we are continuously improving the feature. So after a brief period where they were broken, they are working again since 7.0.2, so for a while. Yes, that's great. And in the last release, 7.1, we added a merge tables functionality. And yeah, if you're interested in that, maybe check out the release notes and that blog post. And if you have any more questions, I'm not sure whether anyone who is super savvy with the transformations feature is in this call, but if not, put it on the agenda for next time. And now some announcements. We're currently researching different projects. One topic is the onboarding experience with Grafana in general, and more specifically with Grafana Cloud. And then we're also looking to work on the search and navigation. So we would love some feedback on that. And like very concretely related to today's topic, we are looking for people who are willing to test the query history usability-wise. So if any of you in the call would like that, please just contact us at the email address displayed or on public Slack. That would be great. Thank you. And then one more thing, in case you didn't know yet, we have a Grafana UI library, which is a component library where you can read documentation about how to use and implement code components that we also use in Grafana. So if you're a plugin developer or know someone who is a plugin developer, or you've always wanted to contribute some front-end stuff to Grafana, check that out. We would love some feedback to improve that as well. And it still needs a lot of documentation, so anyone who is interested in writing documentation for that would also be very welcome. All right, and that's all for announcements. Any more questions? I think there was something in the chat. It's a bit hard to follow. All right, Diana just added a link. That's great. Thank you very much. Then we can get into the query history. So at first, a quick history of the query history. At first, we sat together and thought of why would we want a query history? What would be our goals? What should this history accomplish? So at first, we thought this could be a great tool to educate new users about Explore. So they look at already pre-existing queries and understand better how to query stuff. And then, of course, you could also look at how you solve past problems and maybe remember how that worked and do the same stuff again. And of course, you can also eliminate the need to remember what queries you entered. So if you have some favorite queries, so to say, that you use a lot, then the history could help you rerun them without all the typing. And then if you heave this history on a team level, then you could learn what others are doing, where they're struggling, and you could use it as an educational tool to improve your querying behavior in general. So with these theses that we had of why the history would be a good idea, we went to do some user research because we had not that much time. At first, we ran exploratory research only within Grafana Labs. The good thing about that, though, is we have a lot of new joiners. So there's always fresh meat to ask who are not super biased yet. But of course, it's the best case scenario when we can also ask external users. So we did that later. But for even the internal research, we got 23 pages of observations. So there was already a lot of material to work with and helped us make what you already know. And with the research findings, yeah, I have a quick summary of the most important stuff there. So one thing we noticed is that there are two patterns. There are people who query case by case and don't really have favorite queries. And then there are people who always run the same stuff. So one user said that I don't think it's efficient if I type out my regular queries that I've used before. And another user said that saved queries could be useful, but I usually use dashboards or panels as soon as I need to save a query, so I don't need it in a history. So yeah, you could see like some users think it's super valuable to have these rerunnable queries, and then others, they don't care. And if users wanted to reuse queries, it was mostly recent queries. So people said that if you had too many old queries, that could get messy, and not all queries should be saved forever. They should get deleted at some point. Some more people joined us. Hello, we're already right in the middle of the call. We're talking about research findings now of the query history feature. So one more finding was that a lot of people mentioned that they would like to see a team history to see what others query and how they could make their own querying behavior more efficient. So yeah, that we really pretty much got that from everyone. Funnily though, most people said, I would love to see other people's queries, but I don't want other people to see my queries because there's so many errors, and like every time I have an unsuccessful query, it would be embarrassing to show that off. So that's a problem that we still haven't solved yet. That's something for the discussion later, maybe. Yeah, but with all that input, we went on to ideate and design. You can see here that we started with some scribbles in the top, and then we moved from the scribbles and like merged them into first wireframes, and the wireframes evolved into the current design that you might know from using Grafana. So we prototyped that more advanced design. As you can see, there's a lot of clicks and options there. And then with that prototype, we went to run usability testing with community members. And we recruited community members through the Grafana public Slack. So in case you aren't in there, that might be interesting if you like to be involved in feature development. And yeah, we regularly ask for people who want to test stuff or have opinions. So that could be a good way for you to get involved. And in these 3 test sessions, we got 78 observations and managed to improve the feature even before release. Here is a rough timeline of our development process. So last December, we started a kickoff meeting and planning and did first user research. That's the exploratory research that I already mentioned here, the blue bar. Then we started ideating, designing, presented the first stage design within Grafana Labs, got some feedback, then started coding in February. Then we had the usability testing, iterated, improved the code. Then we had a beta release in Grafana 6.7 and implemented the usability testing results, did last quality assurance, and then the query history was released in Grafana 7. And that's probably where most of you who already know the feature started using it properly. And while you've been doing that, we are in the process of planning query history 2.0, as we call it. So we have first design ideas now and some scribbles. And the next step for us will be to transfer those into more prototypes. And starting from now, you can kind of see it here, it's slightly cut off, but we would like to run more usability testing on the current state of the query history. And then also we would like to show off our new design ideas. So if any of you are interested, tell us later. We would love to have some testers from the community. And now I'm done with all the talking. And I would like to hand over to Ivana, who has working code for us. I'm not sure, Ivana, what would you like to show us today? Do you already have some new improvements to show, or just the status quo?
So it's status quo, but we have pretty recently added the search for the query history, so you can search across all your queries. So maybe that will be the newest thing that I will be demoing. But let me share a screen. Can everyone see my Grafana screen?
Yeah, I can see it, yes.
Okay, just making sure, because the other time I was presenting with the wrong screen, so just making sure it's Grafana there. So yeah, I would like to give you a quick demo of how the query history looks like right now. So we are in the Explore view. So this is Explore, and to open the query history, we have added a button which opens the drawer, which can be expanded or can be made very small, even kind of hidden. Oh, okay. And in the query history, we have currently 3 tabs. We have query history, which basically has all of your queries that you have run. We have a tab with start queries, so the queries that you have started. And we have a settings with which you can customize your query history to kind of work for you in the best possible way. So in the settings, you can select the period of time for which Grafana will save your query history, and the maximum is currently 2 weeks. The other customization is your default active tab. So as you could, I'm not sure if you noticed, but when I open the query history, it opens with the query history tab. But if we switch it, and this is, I would say, mostly for power users who already have their favorite queries, when you open the query history, it will directly open with the start queries. So that's one customization. And the another customization is to only show queries for data source currently active in Explore. So we have Prometheus data source currently active in the Explorer, and therefore we see only Prometheus queries. But if we decide to switch this off, we can now see all queries for all data sources. But I will switch to the custom settings, and we can talk a little bit more about what query history does, or how it can help you with your querying. So if you, for example, run your queries and you know that you ran some query that was very important for you a couple days ago, you can filter your history based on the timeline. Oh, I don't have that all history. So for example, these were 4 days ago. And another thing that you can do is you can search the queries. So you can search or filter based on query text and based on the comment. So for example, if I added a comment debug, I'm able to search for it. Or if I was querying for backend, I am very able to find the query that I was looking for. As I have mentioned, we have a start tab. So you can add the query to the start tab just by clicking at the start. And we can move to the start queries, and we can talk about the basically actionable things that you can do with your queries. First thing is that you can add or edit the comment. So I have here comment debug, but I would like to change it for favorite query. You can easily add comments to kind of remind you or make it easier for you to remember what you use query for. Another thing is that you can copy the query to the clipboard and then just paste it anywhere you want. that's very useful if you, for example, want to share the query to your colleagues or just open a new tab and add it there. But another thing that is very useful is you can copy link to that query to the clipboard. And this way you can basically send the whole query link and it will open the query result for you. And the last thing is deleting of the query. So if, for example, you don't like the query, you don't want to see it in your query history, you can delete the query. For all the start queries, we have you have to confirm that you really want to delete that query, and it will be deleted permanently. For the query history, we decided to not add it there, and you are able to delete your history with one click. And basically the biggest button on the query history is run query. So you are able to run the query right from your query history. So for example, we can run this query and the query is already run for you. So I guess that's most of it. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions or would like to see something more, just let me know.
Yeah, we already have 2 questions in the chat. Okay. So the first one was, would it work to have a full history of the queries, which you could search by fields and present them in recent order? So my question there is, what does would it work mean? Like if we could make it technically work, or is it a good idea UX-wise, or both? Could you maybe elaborate on that? Zargs, or however you pronounce your name. I'm sorry, I don't know. And while, yeah. All right, great. Okay. Thank you, then that's already resolved. Okay, then second question by Adele. So Adele is asking, can you search queries that are successful without errors?
Yes, so currently we are saving only queries that were successful. So we are not saving the queries that didn't resulted in the error. That is maybe a good question for the future to talk about, if we would like to save also the queries that were wrong or didn't result in the response, correct response. But currently, all of these queries are queries that didn't have error.
I have a follow-up question from that. Thanks for answering that question. So can I search based off of user, or is there any way, because I know that you guys just integrated with, like, you can see what users are looking at dashboards. Let's say, like, I want to collaborate with someone and, like, I know that they have been doing a specific query. Can I, like, type their name in here and find them?
I think I can answer that. So currently, users are only able to see their query history. We are in a process of, as just mentioned, researching the team history and how would that work, and how would we create that. But currently, it's only your queries. So no, you are not able to see any other queries of other people.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, Richie had also a good comment about saving unsuccessful one. Maybe we could even store some basic metadata, like how many results we had, how long the query ran, etc. That was actually a thing that we discussed during our brainstorm and during our workshop. Jess is still processing the results of our brainstorm, but those were definitely questions and points that we also raised and were interested in.
Any more questions or feedback? Any requests, what you would like the history to do in the future?
I used to have a comment with the blue heart, so I was just checking if it was for Prometheus, but no.
So I have a question for Adele regarding tagging people. Like, what's behind this? Is this sort of people in your team that you want to kind of investigate the same query, or what's behind this feature request?
I was more thinking of like if my teammates were working on a dashboard that maybe I haven't worked on yet, like with a certain data source, like maybe I could maybe not just clone their dashboard, but understand like what their queries are without having to go in and like pretend to edit them, which is, it always feels a little awkward to me because I don't like touching other people's dashboards, so I always copy it. But it would be really nice to like actually understand what they're doing in their dashboard rather than like having to go into each different widget or whatever, like different chart that they have and try to look at what it's actually doing.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're not using the explore functionality just yet, right? Because that would allow you to just go to any panel and then say explore, and it would bring you to this different area where you can just edit the query as you want, and it won't affect the original panel anymore.
Okay, like that's a good solution to like what I've been doing. I mean, it's not like it's going to be every single day. It's more of like I like to understand how they use it and maybe not have to like go into each different chart. If I could just like look at their like data source of type and like, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have to go to their dashboard like every single time to see it. I can see all of their work from the past like 2 weeks or whatever. Does that make sense? Like I'm not, I think that is a good solution to like if I wanted to look at each one individually, but this allows me to look at it in a more aggregated, like full listing way.
Yeah, no, it actually makes a lot of sense because the same people will probably have similar workflows or similar troubleshooting approaches. And if you're on call then and you have a similar problem, that you probably want to go through the same things. And maybe it's not, you don't have a runbook that's written well, and you're sort of just trying to follow what they've been doing. So a sort of like tracking on which users are using which dashboards maybe could be something useful. I think we're trying something similar for in the enterprise solution that we have, but it's not so workflow oriented in kind of helping you figure out or helping you retrace steps of other people. Yeah, maybe it's a good input. Thanks.
And I think the explore thing is more about taking off at the point where the others arrived at, whereas I think your question was more about retracing how they got to that place instead of just jumping off at the place where they ended up.
Yeah, I think it's actually really interesting having unsuccessful queries in there too. I know it's like a little awkward or a little cringy, because like I've done plenty of unsuccessful queries where they air out, but I think it's like a really good learning opportunity, especially like with new users. Like we had someone that ran a Postgres query, but it like was like a select star and it completely took down our Grafana instance. And if someone else was like, man, I want to put a Postgres query into Grafana, like let's say there's a new user, like they can see like that was unsuccessful, they shouldn't be doing a select star.
One thing which a few messengers and such are doing is basically if I show my status, I see the status of the others, and if I don't, I don't see the status of the others. So maybe that would be a privacy preserving approach, that if I disable that you can see my unsuccessful queries, you can also, like tit for tat, I show my failures and I see what the others did, or I don't see anything.
Yeah, and I think like sorry to completely take over this, but I think one thing that's like good on that is if you're allowed to keep it anonymous, that's great, but at some point you may want admins to be able to see like if they're running like 50 bad queries every week or something, like maybe they need some like further support or more documentation, and like that's a way that we could reach out to them and be like, hey, like if you don't know how to run your query on here, like here's an example of a good one.
I think we had quite some discussions around how to and how much to surface, because there is the real risk of having a chilling effect if people feel watched while doing their work. I think that's at least a hard, like it's hard to balance, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think like with the ability to filter, I think it would kind of allow you to like bring it in if you really want to, like add failed queries from last week or something. But I get where you're saying like every single failed query listed, that's like a lot of resources of like people can't actually use it. It's not like like you can't replicate it.
Yeah, I think we're starting to track like broken dashboards in that sense, and then so that that sort of like an administrator could figure out which of the dashboards in whatever you're monitoring could already be troublesome, and kind of in a preventive measure you could look at them and figure out before anything was wrong on how the queries are broken. But yeah, that's usually not kind of supporting the learning experience. For the learning experience, I would just stay in the explore area, and that is not tracked across any users so far. Yeah.
I guess I can stop sharing and you can just continue with the presentation.
Absolutely. I mean, starting from now, there's not much of a presentation left because we're already kind of in the middle of the discussion. And if you don't have anything regarding the query history itself to discuss, then of course we could also talk about explore and logs in general. If there's anything else in the explore area that you would like to talk about, feel free to throw it in the chat. We've had some more people join, if I saw that correctly. So any questions or opinions on explore in general?
Maybe just one high-level comment, because there was this comment about being sorry for taking over the call, and that's precisely wrong. Of course, this is very much about open discussion, about actually getting feedback. Like anything you want to talk about is on topic by definition. Of course, the topic of this call is just more and more free-form discussion of whatever users care about. So feel free and bold and speak up.
Okay, thank you for that question, Zarx. I don't think we have a decision made here. It's just a topic that was raised. And I think before we at Grafana Labs would decide something like all administrators will see all queries ever queried, we would take that into very good consideration. So I wouldn't say we have decided anything right now. It is an interesting point, but I think the way Grafana usually operates, we're all about protecting privacy and being transparent about what we track. So my gut feeling would be that we would probably make it an opt-in or optional thing where users could decide themselves in their installations how they handle this. But I don't know. I mean, this point was just raised and I don't have an opinion about that. And I know that we do implement some analytics in some parts of Grafana, for example, the enterprise part. So maybe in the future, we would allow some more tracking options there, but especially in the open source version, I don't think we would make a mandatory decision like that. Any other opinions on that from the Grafana side?
I think if we do a bad thing, please keep us honest and call us out about it, because we are quite concerned to keep that balance on the fair and user-centric side.
Yeah, it would be quite critical for us to be able to audit the sort of queries that are being generated. So at the moment, what we have is we have a number of different teams to which we'll have an administrator, which will build dashboards and whatnot, and they're visible. And then we have a read-only user that people have created for each other to be able to read and read through those sort of the data within Grafana. But if we was to open up the Explorer, would be amazing. We'd love to open that up to everyone, but we'd also love to have an audit trail as well of the sort of things that are being looked into, just for our compliance reasons. It would make sense.
Yeah, so any sort of audit logging feature is in like a pre-product phase, so to say. We're still trying to figure out how to do this properly. It's not implemented in Grafana yet, and I think it will also be there'll be a big switch in the configuration to kind of turn this on or off, obviously, and kind of in a similar manner also for kind of the visibility of the query history itself, right? Because these are two different things. One is sort of user facing, and the other thing, the audit logging, that is just for the admins, and that's another project that we're doing internally to figure out what would be a good addition there for kind of to balance what are the requirements at some companies, but also how can we protect the privacy of the employees.
That's it. I think that's the difficulty, right? You're trying to strike a balance between the two. You're trying to remain completely private, protecting users, but then I'll work for quite a large enterprise company, and the difficulty we would have is not being able to see those sort of requests that are being made. So we could implement restrictions on what can be queried, of course, but it's still having some sort of visibility of the things that are being queried and would be good. Yeah, structure that in anyway.
If it's for pure compliance, are you actually inserting that people aren't using the data source directly? Because usually Grafana is not giving you that access control. It's like most of the time isn't the case that you can, if you use Grafana, you can just query the data source directly.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing. We're querying the data source. Yeah.
My point is, in this case, wouldn't you need this actual query logging for compliance in the data source?
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. So like on Elasticsearch or something like that, just querying it from there, or okay, yeah, that makes sense. Then how would that? Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
One question, please.
I mean, with my Prometheus hat on and such, I can absolutely see this as a feature, for example, Cortex. But I'm not convinced that, at least with the open source version, you actually gain much, because you don't have that forced proxy thing, unless I'm very mistaken.
So with something like Prometheus, I usually use Telegraph and InfluxDB. So, with the query though, you're setting it up as a data source. You would have a particular user associated with that data source. So how would you therefore be able to identify which user's making that query through Grafana?
Prometheus itself, not at all. Cortex, you have already a concept of tenants. You don't have a per user concept, but that's at least easier to get into Cortex than into Prometheus. On the other hand, I think we're outside of the scope of the UX call, but you can simply send email if you want, richh@grafana.com. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think this question was also around Influx, and there you would essentially have one user, one API user or something for the data source, and then yeah, it's difficult for the data source to track who made the request, right? Because
exactly, which is why it would make sense to, in the Explore view, be able to log those sort of requests. But if it's outside of the scope, apologies. I'll leave it for now. Maybe drop an email later.
So Fajar had a question, because you were saying.
Oh yeah, regarding the SQL query, is it possible to limit the query? I saw in the forum that if we use the SQL query, we must be careful about the query itself. Something like if you running some update or delete, it can be done. But I think you need to do some limitation, let's say, about the read-only query that allowed when we use the SQL query. Is it possible to do that?
So I think this has to be. So I think this can't really be done on the Grafana side. This needs to be done on the SQL or on the data source level. So, or like on the, like, let's say the MySQL itself, where you would create users or like a user login with a username and a password that only has, like, let's say read access, or it can only access views or something, right? And that is not allowed to modify the data. And then you would use the credentials for that user as a data source credentials in Grafana.
Yeah. Sometimes the administrator doing something not like that. Yeah. If in the Grafana can have some limitation about the read-only query, like a load-only select, it's been better, because in the data source sometimes we can do something like delete or some update. So I think in the data source level of the MySQL or Postgre or MS SQL, something like that, just do only the select query, not the other things like update, insert, and delete. It could be more more safe for us.
Yeah, so we can't really restrict queries on the Grafana side, right? Like if it's not limited by the user, like on the user rights on the SQL side, there's not much that Grafana can do, right? Because that would mean we would need to interpret like queries that modify something and then have that as a separate permission or so. Yeah, that's not something that Grafana can do, sadly.
Yeah, because the securities can be done in the database itself is read-only users, and also if we can be done in the Grafana, it's better.
Are you using Grafana to modify data within MySQL?
No. Just select query, not the modified. So that's in the data source level of the Grafana. So only select query a load rather than insert, delete, and update.
So if you create if when you're setting up the data source within Grafana, you use the MySQL user to which only had read access, or select, you can only do select statements, that would resolve the issue there. Because then the MySQL user, which you're using in Grafana, will only have access to be able to do a select statement. So it's at MySQL access control level as opposed to Grafana.
I agree. But sometimes when we open the Grafana to public, and then sometimes the one that not understand very well about the restriction read only or something, and then they do something nasty in the Grafana, so Grafana can prevent this to do delete it or updating the data.
Yeah, so that's the perfect time to implement a read-only MySQL user, so that if you did open it up to the public, they'd only be able to select data.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably good practice. If you like, if you have a Grafana that's accessible widely and you have an SQL data source, then you definitely shouldn't have Explore open or anything like that. Cool. That is so I guess we moved past the SQL problem, right? Was there anything else, Jess?
So far, I don't think there's anything else in the doc or in the chat. So if there is nothing more that you would like to talk about, dear users, then we can use the last bit of the call to talk about the next UX community call. Any more last questions, ideas, feedback? I guess that's a no. So basically, we do have some things that we could demo, and we can prepare a topic if you don't have any ideas. But of course, we want to make this call so helpful for you, that as helpful for you as possible. So please, if you have any ideas what we should do in the future, any topics that you're interested in, making of stories, feature ideas, anything that you would like to address us as the UX team in the future in these calls, please tell us now.
Yeah, if you think of it 2 minutes after we close the call, there's also the public Slack, Grafana Fails channel that is monitored by UX, or the UX, I believe, posted their email earlier, and then there is the Google Doc that just posted a link to earlier, which will be monitored and checked before the next community call. So
absolutely.
Lots
so
of ways
maybe
to get in touch.
Exactly. Maybe you can all take a little homework. Think about the question, what have you always wanted to know about Grafana UX? And if you have an answer to it, then please tell us what your answer is.
Hey, Jess, just out of curiosity, what do you mean by UX? What is in the UX bucket?
Right. So hopefully you all know that UX stands for user experience. So what our Grafana user experience team deals with is anything relating to how using Grafana makes you feel and whether you have a smooth, frictionless way of using this tool, or whether there's anything where you think, oh, damn it, Grafana, that's really annoying. Why are you doing that? Or, oh, Grafana, I don't understand why you are doing this. In an ideal world, the user experience that you have would be, everything is so clear and easy. I know exactly where to click and what to do next. And I also know what's going to happen if I click here. But oftentimes, especially with tools as complex as Grafana is, that doesn't work for every place in the tool. So if there are questions you've had, like, why does this work like that and not in a better way? Or how did you come up with this ingeniously great feature? Then please ask us and we can make it a topic in a future call.
Thank you very much. It's the first one I've came to, so the structure was good to hear. Hopefully next time I can be a little bit better prepared. Appreciate it.
No worries. I mean, you don't have to be prepared as a user. We are perfectly happy to just have spontaneous discussions about anything that you're interested in. But of course, the more questions we get, the more prepared we can be. So.
Says the person who just gave the users homework.
It's just one question, though. Also, it's not mandatory. It's optional.
But there's another homework. Think of more people who would be interested in joining those calls. And also, if you like, one thing which that was one of the earliest things which I did when I learned about Grafana, pulling in people and use cases of, hey, this isn't covered yet, but it would be super nice to have covered. So you can also feel free to, for example, suggest a certain thing or something. Like, we can't promise that we'll implement it, but you can most certainly use this as a forum to discuss a thing which has always annoyed you or something. Like, this is absolutely supposed to be a two-way street and not just us talking and presenting.
I mean, the only thing I could think of, like, whenever people see that we're using Grafana in the way that we do, they're always like blown away. And they want more of it. Having something which was just easily for, I don't know, for people just to be able to set up a simple sort of monitoring platform for a few of their servers without having to go into extremely, you know, you can download custom dashboards online through the community site, but just having something where they can have a simple system monitor, you can run an agent client side, there's little configuration, and they can chuck up would be nice for people. It always takes me like a little bit of time just to get something set up with Grafana, but I'm sure if you ever wanted to look into it, just
yeah. So there's an internal project around this to kind of curate dashboards a bit better. So, for example, that there should just be one dashboard on how to monitor a Linux host, for example, or one dashboard on how we recommend you monitor a MySQL database.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that is for the hosted service. for now, but we're still trying to figure out how to build a community around these. So there is something happening also in the open source space around
Like
this.
that would be really, really cool, because often you can look at a dashboard, it's absolutely great, people recommend it, and then you have a look at another one and it's not very great.
Yeah,
but it works really great for their use
case.
case scenario. But yeah.
I would
Yeah.
strongly recommend showing up to the next community call. We have a community team that does calls, and the people on that team are the ones who are looking at the dashboards section on, and also taking a close look at plugins, which are closely related to dashboards, and trying to make that whole experience a lot more user-friendly. So we would love to have feedback on that when we have another community call.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So.
I'm going to jump now, but thank you very much for your time, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Goodbye. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess we're through with our program for today, and you all gave great feedback and had great questions. So if people are already starting to leave, we can all start into our rest of the day. But I was very happy to see so many involved people here and have a proper discussion. So hopefully see you all again on the next community call. Don't forget, it's September 7th for the UX community call. And maybe for the people who are still here, Diana, you can also post the date of what Richie of the next regular community call without UX.
I need to see if I can find it offhand.
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually been scheduled yet
I
on the calendar.
Okay.
Mark is scheduled.
Yeah, we got hit by Swedish summer. Our scheduling got hit by Swedish summer.
Basically, August doesn't exist in Sweden, at least not for work Sweden. So maybe it's even in September. I don't know.
Okay, but people can find it in the public calendar.
Yes, everything's in the public calendars, and it's usually at least like 2 to 3 weeks in advance. And we are also trying to see if we can do this more in a like maybe a monthly recap blog post about, hey, this is what's happened, this is what you missed, this is the summary of the last few calls. Why not join the next one? Blah blah blah. Like to.
Cool.
Yeah. And if you have suggestions, you're more than welcome to voice them.
As always.
Yes.
Okay, then thank you so much for your time, everyone. It was great to chat, and see you around in one of the future community calls, I hope. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jess.
Bye.
Thank you.